They drained my college fund to buy my brother a sports car. I found out the day before my tuition was due. No warning, no apology, just, he needs it more than you do. Hi, I'm Lena Whitmore, and for years I was the invisible daughter in a family that only saw one child as worthy. But instead of fighting, I watched, I learned, and 5 years later, I became the silent shareholder they never saw coming. This isn't just a story about money, it's about betrayal, resilience, and reclaiming what was stolen, without ever raising my voice. Have you ever been the afterthought in your own family? Tell me in the comments, because maybe, just maybe, we're not alone in this. I saw the empty chairs before I saw Ethan, the ones with the gold tags, Angela and Richard Whitmore. They sat right in the front row, perfectly centered, reserved with care. 2 seats left unfilled, untouched. The sun had just dipped behind the trees, casting a warm, golden light across the lawn. A string quartet played softly in the background, and someone's phone buzzed faintly a few rows behind. But for a moment, none of that mattered. All I could see were the seats where my parents should have been. My heels clicked softly along the gravel aisle, the dried maple leaves crunching beneath the fabric of my dress. Guests rose to their feet, and every pair of eyes turned toward me, but I was still looking past them, searching, hoping, maybe, and then realizing. They weren't late. They just weren't coming. The rest of the scene played out like a movie I'd watched too many times, beautiful, carefully choreographed, and slightly unreal. The flower arrangements had turned out exactly as I wanted, burnt orange and soft ivory roses wrapped in twine. My maid of honor, Sasha, stood at the altar, holding my bouquet with her quiet strength. She met my gaze as I reached her, and for a second she didn't smile. Instead, she gently squeezed my hand before I passed her the flowers. A signal. I see you, I know. Ethan looked like something out of a dream, calm, solid, a little nervous around the eyes, but smiling just enough to keep me anchored. He took my hands with both of his and whispered, "You okay?" I nodded, but my throat was already closing. I wasn't sure what would come out if I spoke. The officiant began speaking. Something about seasons of change, about love being a choice we make every day. I heard the words, but only as background noise. My eyes kept darting, just briefly, back to those empty seats. I thought about all the ways this day could have been different. The phone call I should have gotten that morning, the hug from my mom backstage while I got ready, my dad wiping away a tear, pretending he wasn't emotional. None of that happened. Instead, I clutched the tiny mom handkerchief tucked into my dress pocket, one I had specially ordered for this day, ivory with blue stitching. I had imagined giving it to her with a shy smile as she welled up in pride, but it stayed in my pocket, untouched, just like their chairs. I remembered being 12 and spending hours making her a Mother's Day card, cutting out shapes, writing a poem about how she made pancakes on Sundays. Ryan grabbed a crumpled sheet of notebook paper, scrawled something barely legible, and handed it to her between bites of cereal. She framed his, and now, here we were. I got through the vows. Barely. My voice shook when I said, "forever," but Ethan didn't flinch. He just smiled, his thumb tracing the back of my hand, steady and silent. The kiss came next, and for a second the world dimmed. The crowd clapped politely. A breeze rustled the leaves. I held on to the moment like I was afraid it would disappear. The reception was a blur of first dances, plates of chicken piccata, and a slideshow Ethan's cousin had put together with photos of us over the years. Laughter came easily. So did wine. For everyone else, at least. People came up and said all the expected things. "You look stunning. What a lovely ceremony. He's a keeper." One older woman, someone from Ethan's side, I think, leaned in kindly and asked, "Where's your family, sweetheart? Didn't see them." I smiled. Not too wide, not too sharp. Delayed flight. Out of Charlotte. Weather issue. She nodded, patted my arm, and said something about how travel these days was impossible. She meant well. They all did. Sasha caught my eye from across the room. She didn't say anything. She just lifted her glass an inch, barely a toast, and I nodded back. By the time the cake was cut and the DJ played the final slow song of the evening, my cheeks hurt from smiling. I slipped away early. Ethan understood. He stayed back to say goodbye to some of the guests and thank his parents. His parents, who had shown up on time, given heartfelt toasts and danced with him like they were proud of the man he'd become. The hotel suite was still and quiet when I entered. I kicked off my shoes, unzipped the back of my dress, and sat at the edge of the bed, staring at my reflection in the full-length mirror. The makeup was still perfect. The hair held its shape, but something in my eyes was hollow. I reached into my bag and pulled out the handkerchief, just held it for a moment, pressing it to my palm like I could will it into meaning something. Then I opened the drawer of the nightstand and placed it inside. No drama, no tears. My phone was charging on the nightstand. I picked it up out of habit. No missed calls, no texts, not even a congrats. Not from Mom, not from Dad, not even from Ryan. Ethan came in not long after, smelling like fresh air and wine. He saw my face, didn't ask questions, and just pulled me close. We lay there quietly, and for once silence didn't feel like absence. It felt like permission to breathe. Later that night, long after Ethan had drifted to sleep, I checked my email. There was one unread message from the photographer. Subject line, "Sneak peek, your first photo." I opened it. There we were. Ethan and I standing at the altar, hand in hand, golden light surrounding us like something out of a painting. In the background, rows of loved ones, faces lit with joy. And then right there, in the front row, 2 empty chairs. They were impossible to miss. It took 3 days for my mom to answer the phone. I called once the morning after the wedding, straight to voicemail. Then again that night. Nothing. The third time was on a Tuesday afternoon while folding laundry, half listening to the muted TV flickering in the background. This time she picked up. Her voice came through like it always did, half distracted, half annoyed. "Lena, what is it? I've been busy." I swallowed. My fingers curled around the corner of a pillowcase I'd been folding. "You missed my wedding." A pause. The sound of a dog barking faintly in the background, followed by the unmistakable jingle of a TV game show theme. "Ryan's dog had a stomach thing," she said. "We couldn't just leave him alone like that." There it was. That sentence, delivered like she was talking about a missed lunch reservation. Not a ceremony I'd spent over a year planning, not the biggest day of my life. I didn't say anything. I waited. She sighed, long and drawn out, like I was being difficult. "Honestly, Lena, you always make things so dramatic." That word, dramatic, slid down my spine like ice. I had heard it before. When I got my first period at school and cried in the nurse's office, she'd said, "Don't be so dramatic." When I called freshman year after bombing my chemistry midterm, her response had been, "Ryan aced his. Maybe study with him next time." Ryan. Always Ryan. The TV in the background got louder. Someone on The Price is Right had just guessed the exact retail price of a stainless steel grill. A bell rang. The audience cheered. My mother didn't even lower the volume. "I thought we talked about this," she added. "You knew we had a situation. It's not like we didn't want to be there." In the background, I heard my dad's voice for the first time. Muffled, but clear enough. We thought she'd understand. I pressed the phone harder to my ear, like I could squeeze more sense out of them if I just held tighter. But all I heard was justification, dismissal, distance. Then my phone buzzed with a text. I glanced down. It was from Ryan. "Chill. It's not like someone died." My hand shook, just slightly. I stared at the message, reread it twice, then locked my phone and placed its screen down on the table. "Lena?" my mom asked. "Are you even listening?" "I am," I said, my voice flat. "I hear everything." "Well, good, because I don't want this turning into one of your guilt spirals, all right? You've got Ethan now. That's what matters." I didn't answer. There was nothing left to say. I didn't hang up exactly. I just slowly took the phone away from my ear and pressed end without another word. The apartment was quiet again. Afternoon sunlight slanted through the blinds, catching little particles of dust in the air. I stood in the middle of the living room, surrounded by unopened wedding gifts, boxes of wine glasses, a stand mixer I wasn't sure we'd use, throw blankets in neutral tones. Cards with cursive handwriting sat in a neat stack by the side table. I hadn't brought myself to read them all yet. My gaze drifted toward the drawer where I'd kept our invitations. I crossed the room, pulled it open. The top one was the mock-up I'd made for my parents, handwritten with a personalized note on the back. I had used a fountain pen, gold ink. I picked it up and read the message I'd written months ago. "Can't wait to see you both there. Front row seats. Love you. Lena." The paper felt heavier now. I tore it in half. Not quickly. Not like in a fit of rage. It was slow, deliberate. A kind of ritual. Like I was cutting ties with something that had already frayed beyond repair. I dropped the two pieces back into the drawer and shut it. Ethan came home an hour later, bringing the scent of coffee and something warm, maybe cinnamon from the bakery down the street. He found me on the couch, staring out the window with a throw blanket over my legs and no lights on. "Hey," he said gently. "You okay?" I nodded. "Talk to your mom?" "Yeah," I said. "She's fine. Everyone's fine." He didn't press. He just set the paper bag on the counter and walked over, brushing my shoulder with his fingertips before heading to the bedroom to change. When he was gone, I reached for my laptop. I opened it slowly. The screen lit up, casting a soft glow over my face. I clicked on the browser, then on Facebook. My profile page came up. A recent photo of Ethan and me at the reception was already tagged and posted by a friend. I had barely looked at it. I clicked into the status box. It blinked back at me. Empty. Waiting. My fingers hovered above the keyboard. I didn't know exactly what I was about to write, but I knew I couldn't hold it anymore. The lie, the silence, the pretending. It had all rotted into something heavy, something I didn't want to carry into this next chapter of my life. Behind me, I heard Ethan's footsteps coming down the hallway. I didn't type a word. Not yet, I just sat there, staring at the empty box. And for the first time in a long time, I wasn't sad. I was done. I didn't write it for revenge. I wrote it because I was tired of pretending it didn't matter, tired of lying to myself, tired of saying, "It's fine, it's not a big deal," while my chest ached like I was holding something broken inside that never got the time to heal. It had been 3 weeks since the wedding, 3 weeks since the empty chairs, 3 weeks since the silence, and I was done carrying it. That Saturday, the apartment felt still in a way only rainy days could manage. Outside, the drizzle tapped a soft, persistent rhythm on the windows. Inside, a Chet Baker playlist hummed low from my laptop speakers. I was curled into the corner of the couch, a coffee mug lukewarm beside me, my hair in a lazy bun, and Ethan out running errands. The air felt suspended, like something was waiting to happen. I opened my laptop and logged into Facebook, not really knowing why. Maybe just to scroll. Maybe to see if anyone had posted something comforting or mundane. Pumpkin bread recipes, baby photos, someone's engagement ring that didn't trigger anything in me. But instead, I clicked on my own profile. Then into the status update box. I stared at the blinking cursor for a long time. Then I started typing. 3 weeks ago, I got married. My parents RSVP'd yes. They didn't show, no call, no message, just silence. The words came slowly, then in a rush. I described how they skipped my wedding for a dog's stomach issue, how my mother called me dramatic, how my father said he thought I'd understand, how Ryan texted me like none of it mattered. Chill. It's not like someone died. I kept writing. They've missed a lot, actually. My high school graduation. Ryan had a dentist appointment. My college recital. He had a sore throat. I used to think if I did everything right, they'd see me. Turns out, some people only ever look in one direction. I didn't cry while writing, not once. I was done crying. I just kept my fingers moving, kept the tone honest, kept it clear. No yelling, no blaming. Just the kind of truth that sits heavy in your bones. I ended with, if you've ever felt like the background character in your own family, this post is for you. I'm not asking for sympathy, just space. Space to say this mattered to me, even if it never did to them. No hashtags, no flair. I read it twice. Then I hit post. I sat back and took a sip of the now cold coffee. The first like came from an old college friend I hadn't spoken to in years. Then another, and another. The comments began soon after. You're braver than me. I feel this so deeply it hurts. Thank you for writing what I've never had the words for. I didn't reply to most of them. I just read, quietly, slowly, letting each one settle in its own way. By late afternoon, the post had been shared a dozen times. Then someone tagged me in a group I didn't know existed, Daughters of Narcissistic Mothers. The admin had reposted my post with the caption, "This is what healing looks like." Messages started rolling in. I got married alone, too. My mom said she couldn't miss bingo night. My father sent me a gift card but skipped my ceremony. You're not alone. A woman I didn't know DM'd me a photo. She was in a wedding dress, smiling bravely at the camera. Behind her, 2 front-row seats sat empty, white cards on them, barely readable. I know what it feels like, she wrote. Keep speaking. We're listening. I stared at that photo longer than I meant to. My thumb hovered over the reply button, but I had no words. What do you say to a stranger who just cracked their heart open in your direction? That night, Ethan returned with takeout. I barely touched mine. He didn't press, just set a hand on my knee while I scrolled. My inbox was a flood, my notifications nonstop. When I went to bed, I left my phone face down on the nightstand, not wanting to be consumed by it. But when I woke up the next morning, it had practically exploded. Over 12,000 shares, thousands of comments, hundreds of messages in my inbox, some from people I hadn't talked to since high school, others from total strangers, some short, same here. I thought I was the only one. Some longer. I've been no contact with my parents for 7 years. This made me feel seen. You reminded me that I'm not crazy and I'm not alone. Some hurt, some healing, some felt like tiny lanterns lit along a winding, dark path. Then there was the message from Aunt May. Just 4 words. I saw your post. No follow-up, no lecture, no guilt. But that silence was loud in its own way. Around midday, Ethan walked into the living room and handed me a bagel with cream cheese. Fuel for the revolutionary, he joked gently and kissed the top of my head. I smiled, not because I felt triumphant, but because I felt weightless, not happy, not yet, but unburdened. Then my phone buzzed again, a text from Sasha. Your mom just posted something. You need to see this. I froze, because I already knew this wasn't the end of anything. It was the beginning. They ordered breadsticks like it was any other day, like they hadn't skipped the most important moment of my life, like they hadn't said it wasn't that big of a deal. The Olive Garden off I-71 was already wrapped in holiday decor, even though it wasn't even Thanksgiving yet. Tinsel and twinkling lights looped along the railing between booths, and some kind of soft instrumental version of Silver Bells played over the speakers. A toddler at a nearby table squealed with delight over a breadstick, and I couldn't help but wonder how many people in this room were pretending to be fine tonight. I arrived 10 minutes early, not because I was eager, but because I needed the silence. I chose a booth tucked into the back corner, beneath a garland of plastic holly. The table was already set with menus and napkins folded neatly atop simple white plates. I took the side facing the door. I didn't want to be surprised. The waitress came by to offer water. I nodded, thanked her. My voice sounded oddly normal. They walked in together, Mom first, then Dad, then Ryan trailing behind like he'd been dragged from a nap he hadn't wanted to take. "Lena," my mother said with that voice she used in church, too cheerful to be real. "You look so thin. Are you eating enough? You're not being picky at Ethan's house, are you?" No hug, just air kisses, and the subtle perfume of something expensive she probably wore out of habit. I nodded once. "Hi." They slid into the booth across from me. Ryan sat on the end, pulled out his phone before he'd even adjusted his coat. My father said nothing, already scrolling on his. My mother adjusted her scarf, smiling tightly. "We ordered some of those breadsticks. You always loved those, remember?" No one remembered I was gluten-sensitive now. Not surprising. She launched into small talk like it was her job. "So, Ethan still at that firm downtown? How's the commute? Did you two ever go on that Charleston trip you mentioned in the spring?" It was like watching someone play hostess at a wake. Bright voice, brittle hands. I let her talk for exactly 90 seconds. Then I interrupted. "Do you understand why I'm hurt?" The question dropped like a glass of cold water on a table covered in candles. Mom blinked. Her mouth stayed open a moment too long, as if waiting for someone else to jump in and save her. "Oh, sweetheart," she said at last. "We had a family emergency. Ryan's dog was sick. It was unfortunate timing, that's all." Ryan didn't look up. "It was just a wedding. You still got married." I kept my face still. I didn't blink. I didn't flinch. "You always overreact," Mom added, waving a hand like she was brushing crumbs off a tablecloth. "It's exhausting sometimes, Lena, honestly." My father, silent until then, grunted without looking up. "We thought you'd get it." Get what, exactly? That a dog's upset stomach ranked above my vows? That they had never, ever planned to come? That I was supposed to continue shrinking myself to fit the shape of their convenience? Thanksgiving 2 years ago surfaced in my mind, when I reminded my mother I was vegetarian and she served turkey anyway. "You're not picky at Ethan's house," she'd said with a smirk. "Don't play that card here." This wasn't just about the wedding. It had never been about one event. This was about a lifetime of being an afterthought. I sat back. I looked at each of them, one by one. And for the first time, I didn't feel grief. I felt done. I reached into my purse and pulled out a $20 bill, folded, crisp. I placed it gently on the table. "What's that for?" my mother asked, her smile now cracked at the edges. "For the breadsticks," I said. Then I stood. "Lena," she said, voice sharpening. "Let's not do this. We're here." I shook my head. "This was your one chance to say something that mattered, to take responsibility. You missed it, again." Ryan scoffed. "Jesus, Lena, could you be more dramatic?" Behind me, I heard my mother's voice, louder now. "Don't be dramatic." I kept walking. I didn't slam the door, didn't raise my voice. I just walked steadily, quietly toward the front. At the hostess stand, a young woman handed me my coat. She must have overheard part of it, maybe all of it. She didn't smile, but her voice was soft. "You handled that with grace," she said. I didn't look back. Outside, the air had turned colder, but the sky was clear. The wind picked up slightly as I walked to my car, but I didn't rush. Something in me had shifted. Not with a bang, but like the tide pulling back after a long storm. Inside that restaurant were the people who had given me life, but they had never chosen me. Not once. And for years, I had made that my burden to fix. I had folded myself in half trying to be easy, quiet, loyal. I had swallowed disappointment like it was communion. I had convinced myself that if I was just good enough, small enough, forgiving enough, they would change. They hadn't. And now I wasn't trying anymore. Some people say closure is a conversation. For me, it was a $20 bill. And the sound of the door clicking shut behind me. It started with comments. Then came the texts. Then the rage. Then silence. That's how unraveling works. Not in one loud crash, but in tremors, each one loosening the next until what looked like a solid structure is suddenly a pile of dust. It began 2 days after the Olive Garden dinner. I hadn't checked Facebook since walking away from that table. I'd let the post live its life. People were still sharing it, commenting, messaging, but I had turned notifications off. I was trying to breathe. Then Sasha sent a screenshot. My mother had posted something, publicly, a vague, wordy Facebook status. Some children feel the need to rewrite history when they can't handle accountability. I won't be addressing rumors. Anyone who knows me knows the truth. It was a classic play. Fog the facts, imply betrayal, make herself the victim. I stared at the screen for a long time. Then I opened my laptop and posted my own photos, screenshots, the RSVP with her signature, the wedding program with her name printed next to my father's, a picture of Ethan and me at the altar, and in the background the 2 empty seats with gold name tags. I didn't add a caption. It didn't need one. The comments were swift and louder this time. Your receipts speak louder than her cryptic pity posts. Funny how the real truth never includes actual evidence. This is what accountability looks like. By the end of the day, I had messages from people I hadn't spoken to in years. A cousin. I always thought something was off with them. Now it makes sense. A distant aunt. I wondered why you looked so tense that Christmas. I didn't want to pry. It was strange, hearing people say they always suspected, like there had been signs and no one had followed them. Then the text started. Ryan went first. No hello, just all caps. You ruined my life. Do you even care what you've done? My job saw this. You took it too far. I read them all, then replied, what part of it wasn't true? He didn't answer. That night, Sasha came over. She brought wine and Thai takeout and curled up on the couch beside me like she had during finals week back in college. You okay? She asked. I'm not sad, I said. I thought I would be, but I'm not. I meant it. I wasn't angry either. I was still. Like the water had finally settled until the voicemail. It came just past midnight. I had been brushing my teeth, phone on the counter. When I saw Mom flash across the screen, I hesitated, then tapped play. Her voice, tight and trembling. After everything we did for you, this is how you treat us? Your father and I bent over backwards for you. We weren't perfect, but who is? You don't get to throw us away like garbage. She didn't cry, but her voice cracked in that way she used when she wanted to seem devastated without actually being sorry. I listened to the whole thing, then deleted it. Not in a storm, not in defiance, just like putting down a stone I'd been carrying for far too long. 3 days passed. No new posts, no texts. Then an email. Subject urgent from Richard Whitmore. It was short, cold, businesslike. We're in serious financial trouble. We need help. Please respond. That was it. No dear Lena, no I'm sorry, no mention of the wedding, of the years, of the voicemail, just a request, a need, as if they were reaching out to a bank. I stared at the screen, remembering a different message. 6th grade spelling bee. I had made it to the finals. My mom didn't show. Later, she said, we had something come up. Ryan had tryouts. There was always something that came up, something more important. Now it was their world falling apart, and suddenly I mattered. A message from Aunt May came next, just a quiet line. You don't owe them a rescue. And I didn't. For the first time, I didn't feel pulled into the pattern. The bait, guilt, respond, repeat cycle that had defined so much of my adulthood. They were unraveling. Ryan's job had gotten wind of the post. Human resources was involved, something about company image. A manager reportedly asked him about his online presence. He'd always pretended to be this self-made prodigy, but people were realizing his entire life was financed by the same parents, now hemorrhaging credibility. My mom's inner circle, her book club, her church group, even her yoga friend, had started pulling away. People asked questions she couldn't spin. Meanwhile, I was getting thank you notes from strangers. You gave me the courage to cut contact. You reminded me I'm not crazy. Some stories were darker than mine, some softer, but all had that same ache beneath them. I just wanted them to care. And maybe that's the thing. We spend our lives begging for crumbs of recognition, not realizing the bakery was never open to us in the first place. I didn't reply to my dad's email. I archived it. Then I lit a candle, curled up beside Ethan, and watched the first snow fall through our living room window. It was quiet, but this time, I liked the quiet. Their house is gone now, the one where I memorized how to tiptoe so I wouldn't be told I was too much, too loud, too sensitive, too needy. I heard it from my cousin Kate. Foreclosure, finally. She sent a screenshot of the listing, followed by, "Can't say I'm surprised." They burned every bridge they had. I stared at the photo for a moment. The faded shutters, the porch swing with peeling paint, the front door I'd closed behind me so many times, wondering if one day they'd ask me to come back through it. They never had, and now they couldn't. The final messages came one after another that spring. Angela, "We have no one left. We need you. We're still your parents." Richard, "You've made your point. It's time to move on. Help us." Ryan, "You're really just going to let your family fall apart?" I read them all, then replied once, short and clear, "You never treated me like family. Don't ask me now." Then I blocked every number, every email, every attempt. I thought that moment would feel powerful, victorious. It didn't. It felt quiet, simple, like setting down a backpack I didn't know I'd been carrying since childhood. Ryan got evicted 2 weeks later. A friend of a friend posted something vague online about boundaries and finally kicking someone off the couch. I didn't comment, didn't share, but I knew. Angela tried one more guilt trip, a voicemail. Her voice trembled in the way it always did when she wanted pity but never responsibility. "You'll regret this. One day we'll be gone and you'll wish you'd done more." I listened all the way through, then deleted it. Some ghosts don't need to be banished, just unfollowed. Summer arrived slowly, like it knew I needed gentleness. My life felt full in a new way, not loud, not flashy, but rooted. Ethan and I hosted Sunday brunch for a few close friends. We filled the kitchen with fresh herbs and the scent of baked citrus. My promotion came through, senior manager. A photo of the announcement now hangs beside the bookshelf next to a succulent that somehow keeps surviving my neglect. Aunt May sent one last note in June, a simple card, handwritten. "I'm proud of you, and I'm sorry I didn't say it sooner." That meant more than she knew. We celebrated the promotion by going back to the little cafe where Ethan and I first had brunch. Same corner table, same buttery toast. He raised his mimosa and said, "To peace, finally." And for once, I didn't brace myself before clinking glasses. The package came not long after that. No return address, just a plain brown box, slightly weathered. Inside, childhood photos, Christmas mornings, Halloween costumes, my 6th grade school play, and at the very bottom, a letter. I didn't open it. I didn't even hesitate. I took the whole box, walked it out to the trash bin, and let it fall with a dull thud. Some stories don't need a final chapter, they just need to be closed. In early autumn, I drove to the wedding venue. Ethan offered to come with me, but I told him I needed to do this alone. It wasn't dramatic. I didn't cry. I just parked near the tree line, walked the gravel path up the gentle hill, and stood in the same spot where I had once looked out and seen 2 empty chairs. This time, the ceremony space was empty. No guests, no music, just wind through the grass and the faint hum of late-season cicadas. I stood where I'd stood that day, and I smiled. I took out my phone and snapped a photo of the chairs, still there, still gold-framed, but this time, they didn't represent absence. They represented release. I didn't need them filled. I didn't need them. On the drive home, I turned the radio off. No podcasts, No playlists, just silence. And it wasn't heavy anymore. It wasn't the silence of being ignored. It was the kind of silence you get when a storm has passed and the sky finally exhales. At home, Ethan was on the porch, 2 mugs in hand, one for him, one for me. He smiled as I climbed the steps. "You look lighter," he said. I nodded. "I am." Later that night, as we curled into bed, he asked, "Do you ever think they'll try again?" I thought about it. "Maybe," I said, "but it doesn't matter anymore." And it didn't. Because I had found something better than revenge. Better than the apology I used to dream about. I had found the one thing they could never take from me. Peace. Not silence that begged to be filled, but silence that meant I had stopped needing to be heard by people who never listened. I didn't need revenge. I needed the silence. I needed to not need them, and now I don't. There were no fireworks, no final blowout, just me, standing in silence where pain used to echo. The empty chairs weren't a wound anymore. They were a choice. Mine. Sometimes peace doesn't come from making others understand. It comes from no longer needing them to. We grow not by erasing the past, but by refusing to live under its weight. In families, love should never be conditional on silence or shrinking ourselves just to belong. If this story stirred something in you, I hope you'll share your own. Your voice matters. And healing, though quiet, is never lonely when we speak our truths out loud.